The other piece of it, of course, is we all know in the call center world that retention of staff and churn is a challenge for some verticals in the call center space. And if you have employees that perform better, they're hitting their goals, they're happier, they're probably going to stay long.
Yeah, that's right.
The cost to train people, onboard people, bring in people is real. And so I think there's probably something that you see in that as well, is that there is probably some correlation that you've been able to find between the people that are performing better and happier are probably going to stay around.
Well, I mean, it's not a huge surprise that there's a high correlation between the employee experience measures and retention. Right? It's not a huge, but I think the other context is, and is obviously the remote work context, which is obviously huge in the industry as well. And it's not just people being supported, but being supported when everybody's isolated in different locations, some part of the time. So that just heightens the need for kind of supportive technologies.
Yeah, no, completely agree with that. And so when we look at, earlier we talked about that sometimes technology is looked at as something that's cold, right? It doesn't really have that human connection, and that you're using technology to improve the human connection. How do you actually then advocate for maintaining that human touch when the world is really becoming a lot more automated? And are there strategies that you recommend to find that balance between keeping that human connection and not losing it?
No, it's important. So maybe I'll start with the agent and then start with the organization. Go to the organization after that. With respect to the agent, one of the things we've seen, and it's just interesting. Like this is relatively recent, I would say. Yes, within the last year in particular, but we've seen a real hunger from the agents to want to engage with AI solutions. And you might go, really? And one of the reasons is when you think about it from the perspective of an agent, this is an opportunity to become fluent and to really future-proof themselves for the future changes and sort of the arrival of the technology. So that's before they like the technologies, they would use it, but now it's much more, they're leaning in much more because they're like, okay, I have to get my hands around this. I have to understand what this is. I have to be able to say that I can work in tandem with an AI solution to ensure my sort of future career prospects. So that's a positive for these types of technologies. But that relates to that's answering the question of how do you get somebody to adopt a human in the loop technology like what Kajito is. Then there's the question of the human touch in general versus full automation, which is in some ways a question for our clients, the management organizations, and what they choose to do. The thing I would say on that is that you go back for as long as you can look at the data and the number of contact center agents that are required pretty much goes up with GDP. It kind of goes up with GDP. And we've been doing self-service for a very long time. I mean, we've been doing self-service since there were mail order catalogs, right? So like and the way I think about it, it's a little, I have healthcare experience. It's like bending the curve on healthcare costs. Self-service is fantastic. We should continue to do it. But because of growth, because the world gets more complex, people can afford it. People also want service. They want self-service options, and they want service options. And the demand for both just increases. So really, when you think about self-service, what it's truly doing is kind of bending the curve on the demand for service rather than really bringing it down. That's what all the data would show. And so I think that the question, and this is always a challenge for our clients, like the business on the business side, is how aggressive are you going to be in terms of assuming that you can get through things by increasing self-service and therefore bringing down your service? Like, how aggressive should you be, right? And I would say you should be very, very careful. I would say you should be very, very careful because often that need to provide service is going to grow with your organization, and it is hard to do self-service to the extent that it's going to require less sort of human resource than your growth rate.